Smooth 98.1, Smooth Breakfast with Valentine Ohu.
And Ayo Mairo Ese. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning and special good morning and Merry Christmas and Happy Boxing Day in arrears and everything to Tunde Okufi at Big Coops.
Hi, morning Valentine, morning Ayo.
Morning.
Compliments to the season, Lagos.
Same to
We
you.
feel very privileged to have you join us this morning.
Yes, I'm very grateful too. Thank you.
And I feel privileged to be here.
Wow. Send us messages on WhatsApp in reaction to the stories. You want to comment on each story that interests you, please send it to 0809 444 0981.
You can also send to our Twitter handle. We're smooth981fm. Kindly use the hashtag freshly pressed 981 so we can easily track your messages. On YouTube or youtube.com, search for smooth981 there. There's also an option to send us messages using the live chat option.
Our first story is from Daily Times. Border closures in the news again. Says that according to a statistics that was brought up by the officials of the Nigerian Institute of Animal Science, they said that border closure have saved Nigeria 50 billion naira. Has this arrived at? What statistic? How do they get this funds or this money rather? How do they sum this up today?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Well, it's simple actually. He's saying that because we haven't, that ideally this is money that we would have spent on foreign chicken. All right. So since the borders are closed and we can't bring them in, we can't smuggle them in, that this is how much it has saved the nation, which is an interesting way to look at it, to be honest, because you can then also look at it that clearly there is this money represents the shortfall.
Yes.
So the other way to describe it is that this amount he says we're saving is actually the shortfall in demand that we're unable to meet. He goes into, people can pick up, so he goes into some detail saying, the amount of output that we have, the number of birds, I think he says we have 180 million, birds, the amount of outputs we have every year. And this is good for the industry. But where I have a bit of an issue is when we conflate two things, right? The border closure with protecting agriculture, protecting a specific industry. Every country, literally every country has industries to protect. It's very common and it's part of what forms, debates along. It's what forms the finer detail of trade agreements. That even if we coming to some agreement as to trade freely between each other, what industries do I potentially want to give preferential treatment so they don't get run over by imports? And we can do that for agriculture, and we have done that for agriculture. We have the importation of chicken and other poultry products, I believe, has been illegal for years, right? So the effectiveness of that ban is what should be brought under sharp focus, not the closure in the borders. The argument is that the closure in the borders has helped further enforce that, but let's run things efficiently, right? We know the land borders are difficult to police, difficult to manage, but it's not the border closure. The policy in itself is good. Importation of chicken and other poultry products are not allowed so that the domestic industry can grow. But clearly the reason, and these numbers say it, that the domestic industry cannot meet the demand. We can't even meet the demand for eggs.
Yes.
Right?
We're not a self-sustaining country.
We're not. So, and these things will find their way in. But there's a concerted effort from many angles to sell this border closure thing. So I'm sure another story even talks about it.
Yeah, we have another story. And I think also this week we've talked about, from this week, last week, we've all very much highlighted facts, figures, data, and that's why I probably bring out the amount of money that has been saved, because we keep hearing officials from the federal government saying we've saved a lot of money, we're recording success.
Absolutely, it's two sides to the coin. You're holding up saying we've saved this amount, but that amount is a reflection of the shortfall in demand.
Which essentially means that, you only say you saved money when everybody is taken care of.
Exactly.
When you have enough.
Exactly.
But we don't have enough, so that in itself is a deficit.
It's a deficit. That figure represents a deficit. If you're saying that, okay, 10 birds needed to be eaten in the country, for instance, and it would have cost us simplistically 5 naira to supply those five birds domestically, versus maybe 15 naira to supply them, by imports, then you can say we save 10 naira.
That's when
Because
that's
you've given
when,
everybody
Thank
that
you.
needs.
That's
right?
when the domestic production
Exactly.
provides for that.
Yes, but if domestic production only provides 2 birds and then you don't eat the
The other
remaining
two.
3,
Yeah.
then you say, oh, we saved X amount. Come on.
Thank you. And in a similar vein, from Punch newspaper, customs comb Lagos-Abeokuta road and hunt for smuggled rice. They said the hunt covered certain locations in Adodo, Ota, local government area of Ogun State. They're searching for smuggled rice, frozen poultry, and other contraband that's brought into the country through Duroko land border. Doesn't this cast a shadow of doubt on the Nigerian Customs Service? I mean, we're hoping that this blockage or partial closure of the borders could give them a more control on what comes in and goes out. Your thoughts?
First of all, that bit of more control on our borders, I think, has to. We need to. How do I say this? I'm trying to avoid the word technology, but we need to modernize how we, manage and/or monitor the borders. To be honest, we don't have any way, literally. I mean, in certain parts of the country, it's no more than a bicycle chain. In fact, other parts, there's really no demarcation, no physical demarcation to know that you've crossed the border, and it's a relatively large border, so it's difficult. It's difficult to police. So that's control. All I can say is that these guys know the customs guys know the typical, shall I say, smuggling routes or the favorite paths, and it hasn't stopped chicken from coming in. It hasn't stopped, yes, because I still see frozen chicken literally everywhere. It hasn't stopped rice from coming in. It just means that it has increased the premium on getting those things through and passing them through customs. I mean, customs, this border closure has really put the customs officers in the limelight. They're the current they're co-beneficiaries of this thing.
I heard this thing you just said 3 statements ago where you say it has increased the premium even for the customs.
Yes,
Because some people the allegations that their pockets have been lined.
Of course.
And especially this season,
Of
Christmas
course.
period.
I mean, they're huge advocates from the top down of the customs service. They're huge advocates of this border closure. It's given them another line of power and saying that, look, this thing has even become riskier than it should be. So your premium needs to go up if you're going through here. Okay, so they're on the hunt for rice. All sorts of things come to mind. I don't know if you guys remember that viral video of them harassing a lady, an elderly woman who was supposedly smuggling rice. This was probably no more than a dairy cow too, and that she had hid in different parts of her wrapper. And you can tell that this woman just wants to feed her family. Really, this is not for commercial purposes. But the level to which they were embarrassing, and so I can imagine there's a lot of seizure. No mention over 2,000 bags of rice. No mention of what happens to those bags. Do they end up on customs tables over the festive period? Do they get destroyed? No mention of even, which I would have thought that the crime here is smuggling, right?
Yeah.
No mention of prosecution, no mention of arraignment of the guys, no mention of the offense of smuggling. It's just that we seize this amount of rice. What happens?
Very interesting.
All right, we have comments on WhatsApp. Thanks a lot for sending your messages in. Ifanyo Kolise from Iba says, in talking about money saved as regards poultry business as a result of border closure, are the local fowls that literally, I think you want to say, do not have enough meat on them, are they also factored in?
It's called free range chicken.
Free range.
Yeah.
Princess, the fact of this border closure depends on the side we stand and our biases. Farmers, especially poultry farmers, are balling this period. Imagine selling over 3,000 birds and about 300 crates of eggs daily since the border closure. And then Dari says,
when you make allegations against the customs, you better have proof.
yes, sir. All right, Yinka says, customs hunt for smuggled rice. I beg, are these customs and federal government in general, are they deaf to the fact that the local rice ain't good? See, the last one I cooked turned out as tuwo. We abandoned that one and got another one that when we cooked it, it appeared like we cooked stones and garnished it with rice. They need to fix this, else this is just sheer wickedness. I bet ASUU Rock eats imported rice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jolomi from Badagry says, come on guys, even superpower nations such as the United States smuggling, it still takes place there. Let's give the Nigerian Customs Service some applause here. I live in Badagry. I see them at work firsthand. Thank you very much,
That's
Jolomi.
important.
Yeah.
We like to get this kind of messages just to get an eyewitness reports.
Yes.
As well.
Adenka from First Access. The truth is that we're true to ourselves in Nigeria. If the customs want to keep our borders to prevent stuff to come in, they can't do that effectively with less staff.
And then there comes staff motivation to
Yes.
work and do the right thing. Thank you so much. FIRS is in the news this time around from Thisday newspaper, and they've used the word shortfall in the analysis of how much revenue they've generated in 2019. They put the figure at 3.7 trillion naira. Still a shortfall from the target they had, the projection of 8.8 trillion naira. Tunde, your thoughts, please.
Okay, a lot is in the since the non-renewal of Fowler's contract. Let's focus on perhaps trying to explain, why those decisions or that decision has been made. And for the first, the first things that come to mind is in our initial targets of 8.81 trillion. What was it based on?
Yeah.
I'll be curious. I am curious, and we've done less than that actually, right? Let's say just about half of that figure. So how was 8.8 trillion arrived at? Is it an arbitrary figure? Was it a wish? Because revenue collection is directly from taxation anyway, is directly linked to the populace. How businesses have performed within the country, how individuals have performed within the country, and when there's no growth, it just seems a bit asymmetric. There's no, there isn't any growth, significant growth in GDP. How do you expect tax revenue to grow, by such significant, percentages? It mentions that between 2011 and 2019, there was a target of 45.7. Over this, should we say, 8-year period, they were able to rake in 40.5, which is only a shortfall of 5 billion. So that is pretty decent, to be honest, over that period of time. And he mentions that they have a staff strength of, they've increased the staff strength by 3,000 staff, and again, I'll say it's not as justification for why they shouldn't fall short. And I'm like, it's beyond the number of staff that you've increased by. It's also the people's ability to be able to pay, pay tax. He goes on to mention, he points out, and this might be indicative of the direction we're going in and why there may have been a change in stewardship. He mentions, he singles out 2012 and says in 2012 they exceeded the 4.6 trillion that they had. They exceeded 3.6 trillion that they targeted and generated 4.6 without the active participation of consultants. In the current structure, we use a lot of consultants to, bring in our tax revenue, and these consultants are viewed generally to be feeding fat, right? So that might be an indication of where the current stewardship wants to take things and not, use consultants as much and, have them line their pockets and say, we will do this, directly. He encourages them. He says, look, before the end of the year, let's expect the taxman to increase his favor, because they say that they intend to not only meet the 8.5 that they've not met, but actually double the 8.5. Let's see, before the end of 2020. That's an indication.
How realistic is this?
That feeds in my first point: is how do they arrive at the revenue targets? What is it based on? It's based on this. This statement makes it sound like a thumbs up. I know it's not, and it shouldn't be, but it's a bit indicative.
Interesting.
All right, an interesting comment here, going back to our previous story with regards to the border closure. Emeka Onelum says that my mom told me her fishery business has boomed beyond her expectations since the border closure. Her prayer, as well as others in the business, is for the border not to be reopened.
Yeah, so I mean, depending on where you stand in this life, you would, you have different perspectives. So it is. We've said it is clear it will benefit domestic industry, but remember, it's demand and supply.
Yes.
We can't meet the demand of everyone that needs it. The reason why businesses boomed is because obviously now there will be more demand to take up every scarce resource. But what about all the other people who will be without chicken or be without fish over this period of time? right? We have a nation to feed.
Yes, let's not forget international trade as well and the impact. So yes, it could also almost be seen as a selfish policy because don't forget that we also want to export to other parts of Africa. So if we're all closing our borders, how are we going to trade? How are we going to trade? Yeah. So it's good for us now, but ultimately, I'm sure for your mom and for others who are trading, you'd want to expand your business to be able to export your produce to other parts of the country, to Africa. What if they also close their borders?
I'll keep saying it's a near lazy approach, right? From it's a lazy policy approach. You can protect industries without this blanket border closure. We need to protect industries. We need to protect the agriculture industry. It is important. Nations in the West do that as well.
Yeah.
You know, the French subsidize cow farming, the English the same. You know, milk production. All of these things are subsidized to protect that industry. They don't have a blanket, you know, closure on the border because it is stifling industry. The way you're rejoicing, the other industries actually require this the flow of produce, and they're struggling. So we should look at it on the. Now we're singing that this is positive for us, but someone needs to look at the analysis of overall how does it work.
And then in the long run, while the idea is good to ensure that the local production is improved, by the time now we are now probably near self-sustenance. The prices will run a risk of crashing.
Well, that is
when you can't export, when you can't expand your market.
Then there's then there's gluttony within your own country and economy, and then the prices crash, and then the same people who are rejoicing now start to scream and shout. Also, finally, which is something that was highlighted by some international trade wars, is that if you continue along this path, so today you have trading partners. If you close borders, you don't trade with them in essence. They will go elsewhere
and look for another market.
They will look for other markets. Yes. When you are ready, they're no longer there. Do you understand? So where does that leave you?
Okay.
If I enter on the tax matter says there can only be a spike in tax revenue if there are many businesses in the economy, and this can only be possible if there's a friendly business environment.
All right, let's go to this next story very quickly from this newspaper. The Academic Staff Union of Universities has proposed the University Transparency and Accountability Solution, UTAS, as an alternative to the government's centralized payroll system of the Integrated Payroll and Personal Information System, over which it is at war with the federal government to enroll in it. There must be more pros. There could be more pros over cons with this new system that they're proposing to the federal government. But we know how these conversations go. I'm not anticipating that there will be a bottleneck to this. There will be, but I'm hoping that it gets addressed amicably. But how do you see the federal government receiving this proposal?
Turning it down, quite simply. This story rumbles on it, and my position from when it first emerged many months ago is the same. Of all the things for ASUU to be struggling or going to, in quotes, air quotes, war with the federal government over, I don't think this should be it. Personally, and a number of people share the same opinion. There is efficiency. So the federal government system is centralized, right? So there's efficiency there. There's a operational efficiency. There's a cost efficiency. Now, ASUU says they want their own system and they're going to war over it. What happens when the next MD or other agencies or entities, so to say, that are paid by the federal government are allowed to have their own? Then we lose that benefit of having something central that saves us money. We'll then have budgets in individual agencies to manage these things. I honestly don't think, other than the reasons that everyone has highlighted, that ASUU is fretting, their members are fretting because this system will likely highlight the multiple one individual or one collecting income in multiple places. It suddenly brings all of that under focus, and that is why they're agitating. Yes, they can go and discuss. It's dialogue, right? So let us say this is dialogue. They need to go and discuss this with the federal government and say, okay, do you know what, we have an alternative. Federal government may say, okay, do you know, maybe this thing has rumbled on for too long. Let's compromise and take on board the ASUU system, as long as you can provide us input into our own system in an agreed format. But to me, I think it's ASUU has a lot more to argue with and look to fix than this. And using one central system will generally always trumps different disparate systems that is difficult to share information. We keep talking about databases today and identification, national identification systems, where we have biodata and many in different silos, and we say there should be consolidation there. Why can't there be consolidation in payroll? I mean, it is essentially one paymaster, right? So why is different systems?
And from reading through the details of this story, it makes me feel like this would have been a move they would have made before the federal government instituted
exactly.
the IP system.
So it's just a bit late. If they had gone forward, okay, let's say maybe the federal government didn't consult widely enough
to find out where the flaws were,
where the flaws were, and or if there was anything else in development. But trust me, the ASUU system, the UTAS one, has only just come up now. I haven't heard it mentioned anywhere else at any point in the initial argument. It didn't say, "Oh, we have something already using.
We're already addressing our issues."
It was, "No, we don't want this. You can't control us." Now they say they have something.
All right, thank you very much, Tunde. Let's move on to our next story. That's good news. Earlier this month, in December 1 to be exact, when the Federal Road Safety Corps had mentioned that we're going to open the Berger Bridge to allow for free flow of traffic. I don't know how much it has helped, because we have still heard of horrendous traffic situations on Lagos-Abeokuta Expressway. However, they're saying this is to combat that traffic, as they're going to continue or resume reconstruction of the bridge from January 6th. Can you please take us through the story?
Okay, that pretty much is in essence. So they removed barriers so Santa's sleigh could go through.
But don't you love the traffic these days?
Sorry?
Don't you love the traffic?
Oh, I just love it. Can it stay the way it is?
It's not really that great. For some reason this year it's a bit worse than previous years. Even usually we get a reprieve from about the 24th, 25th, and until
this one went on. We didn't get a reprieve until almost Christmas Day.
Even then there was still traffic. So I don't know.
It's an indication now that the economy isn't growing. There's less disposable income. People don't want to travel as much as they used to. And they're getting taxed out of their socks. But so back to this story. So they've given the people a shall I say, maybe Christmas reprieve. If you look at a lot of the only thing I'll highlight here is because what they've done is it's not that the road has been better, it's the blockades and the different things that they sort of moved to help traffic flow a bit more. And you look at all of these constructions, and sometimes the blockades and the barriers that they put aggravate the situation more than anything else, and a hazard. So traffic is back.
It's back
on that stretch. So
from the 6th of January. So be mindful for those who have been who have to commute via that part of the road. Make sure you're mindful.
Those who've gone out of Lagos.
On WhatsApp, we have more messages. Ayokule says we should always be careful of our usage of terms in this border closure issue. It is not a ban on importation. Nigeria exports will not be affected because we do not smuggle our products to other countries. There's also another message from David Taylor from Badagry. He says, Valentine, that guy that messaged from Badagry is perhaps a member of the ruling party. If you want to know if customs allow rice into the country, journey on the Lagos-Badagry Expressway between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. Most buses, he said, pad rice and just hand over like 500 to 1,000 to customs officials or representatives. And he said it's called Kelebe. I see them all the time. We can see rice inflow into Nigeria, just reduced, but they still come in, and these security officials are balling, including police. That's what they tell us.
Let me just mention something, particularly with food smuggling. You need to be careful if you still buy those things, because the process that they used to
bring them
to preserve, and
especially the frozen ones.
You don't want to eat things like that. So yes, you're still having your frozen chicken, but you have to be careful because it's smuggled in. You don't know what they've done to preserve it.
And that's very important to mention, because even customs officers are not just they're not just focused on stopping things from coming in or regulating. They're regulating even beyond just the face value. They want to check the source and also ensure quality control.
Yeah. All right. Olatunji says Lagos-Ibadan is a nightmare. My neighbor left home 6 a.m. on Christmas Day, but had to make a U-turn by 10 a.m. around MFN.
Wow.
That's 4 hours on the road. I've heard stories like that. Let's move on to the next one. Another one I'm really interested in. New Telegraph says data renewal, NCC, that's the Nigerian Communications Commission, slams 2.8 billion naira fines on telcos.
Okay, for billion for the automatic renewal of subscribers' data. Okay, so the truth is, we can say that our telco companies have, over the years, and even till continue to do so, take a lot of liberty with their subscribers, especially subscribers that are, for lack of a better word, have less of a voice or are less enlightened and don't really know what's going on with their their lines or their plans. They subscribe them to things without them asking. It's an opt-out sort of system and not an opt-in. So you're automatically subscribed and something is rolling on. There's a clamp on FIRS, which these SMSs, text this is to subscribe to love tips or some other rubbish like that, and the telco is essentially just skimming these huge amounts off the top. Automatic data renewal apparently too is another one, and they had been warned about this. You can look at the finance, it does look it does look excessive, and it fits in all those things but it fits in with the theme. Every industry, everyone should know, every industry should know that right now our government is looking for money. So any industry that is regulated, you need to be on your best behavior, because if you don't, your regulator will come for you. It's from telco industry, banking, any regulated space, right? The regulators are in a very active mode because, again, there's shortfalls that we need to cover, and these are viable options. If you misstep, fines will be carried out to the fullest extent. It, however, does create an impression that that we're not business friendly in a sense, and that we're over eager to impose fines. But the telcos too have also done a lot of they've misstepped as well. So they should just adhere to the rules, and these kind of fines wouldn't come.
The fines are not funny at all.
Subscribers need to be protected.
That's right.
Airtel is to pay a fine of 2.3 billion naira. MTN and Globalcom are to pay 164 million and 232 million.
I would prefer that if they were to take these fines and force them to pay back to subscribers as some sort of benefit.
They actually said they should refund the money that they
first, in addition to the fines.
It's brilliant. So just to mention this, so people know their rights. They are not supposed to impose their services on you. They're meant to send you a text. You send them a text to consent that you agree to having that service. So if any automatic renewal is done on your account, you have a right to complain.
Although they can be crafty these days, like I see on my phones, this thing that pops up, I don't know the special name for it. It just pops up on the screen. And if you don't watch, if you're not careful, you automatically
just
say
yes. Yeah.
It's not a text message. It's a flash message.
Yes.
I call flash messages. Jolami from Badagry says, "LOL." For the record, I'm not a member of the APC. That's the guy who says from Badagry. And then another one, Sheifumi says, Nigeria rice is not as bad as some people make it sound.
True.
I got a bag of rice made in Kano and was really impressed about how neat and stone-free it was. Government and all of us just need to encourage these manufacturers. Imagine if we have started this 20 years ago. Very valid point.
Very true.
Quick one here, because it's a feel-good Friday and it's been trending. Ganduje may ban opposite sexes from plying same tricycles in Kano, according to a government official. From Vanguard newspaper, Tunde, please, what do you think about this?
Yes, look, I'm no expert on Sharia law, but I'll just say one thing. Let's look to the Middle East, that's had shares similar values to large parts of northern Nigeria, and what Ganduje is pushing for. Let's look at Saudi Arabia, where until recently they didn't have women drive cars.
Yes.
They are, women can now drive cars. Women can now, drive cars, go unattended. There's a time they couldn't go unattended. So there's a wave of liberalization that's going on for the purpose of modernizing or modernization. I don't know why we want to step, backwards in a sense, if that's the view. Maybe it's not backwards, but the governor had better be ready to provide enough tricycles to effect, the separation, if that's what he wants. More importantly, do we listen to the people? Is it something that people are clamoring for? If it's something that the people are clamoring for, then okay, that's what they want in that part of the country.
Or is it
Why
just
not?
serving the interest of?
Or is he just exactly what what's driving? Is it government for the people? Because the people want A, B, and C, then we start focusing on Z and D.
But if he's working towards this to ensure safety of commuters, because we know that,
or safety of women, for instance, perhaps. But then again, we're treating the symptom and not the issue.
He's giving his reason, and he says it's because of the is for religious reasons.
Yeah.
So let's not even.
That's what I read here. He said it's for religious reasons.
It's not to protect women or anything.
Yeah.
Talking about Saudi Arabia, I have to mention this. Saudi Arabia just banned under 18 marriage. I saw a tweet saying that rather than you focusing on men and women, why don't you focus on trying to stop child marriage in Kano State, as we have, if you're going to borrow relief from
distraction
religious countries.
Thank you very much, Dari from Surulere. He said that those things, the messaging I was trying to figure out, they said they're called push messages. There are no options, but okay.
Yeah, just okay. When you hear okay, man, you're in.
All right. Tunde, thank you so much for coming in here this morning, 27th December. It'll be on record. as we end the decade on the grand stars. This is actually the last Feel Good Friday Freshly Pressed for the decade.
Yes.
And
so I said I felt privileged.
I know.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we still owe us one on Monday.
Yes, we do. I like that. Hey, well done. All right, coming up next is sports inside of the locker room. Stay with us.
Tunde, you get it right.
Yeah.